Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome to Tony L Talks. I'm your host, Tony L. Just on here to talk about the Voting Rights Act again because there's so much propaganda going on. There's so much false information being spread on the internet. So I figured that I would just come on and talk to you guys just to give a clear explanation again. Plus, I'm creating content that I can just clip up. What's up, y'all? How y'all doing? Oh, let me turn the lights on. Yeah. Yeah. Hope everybody's doing well today. Uh Not going to be on very long. As you all know, I'm pretty much like shadow banned and censored on most of these platforms. So if you want to see me, uh you probably got to go to TikTok. Rumble, you can see me over there on Rumble. YouTube, I'm going to start using my YouTube again, and I'm going to start putting all of this stuff on my podcast on the podcast platform. Why am I hearing it echo? Oh, oh, got it. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, all right. Had some technical difficulties. I don't have a crew here with me, so I'm figuring it all out by myself. So yeah, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the Supreme Court decision in Louisiana, the Calais decision that everyone is up in arms about. Bro, I was watching this this video by Rachel Maddow, and I was infuriated when I was listening to the things that she was saying. And I think it's time that we start to address this stuff. And I gotta just show it to you guys, man, because it's horrible to see the level of like manipulation and gaslighting. Hold on, wait. Let me pull this up. Wait, I want to pull it up. This is it right here. Let me pause it too, because I'm gonna play it and I'm gonna comment on it. But yeah. All right. So yeah, I'm ready to go. So let's talk about it. First, I'm gonna play some of the people who have been spreading the propaganda, specifically targeting black people. Now, I want you to understand what's going on here, right? What's going on is that the Democrat Party is really in shambles. Oh, by the way, I'm not speaking from a partisan perspective. Now, I understand that there are people who get offended when they hear critique of the Democrat Party. And it triggers that tribalist mindset within you, and it tends to shut your brain off when you hear that, especially when it's coming from me. Oh, Tony, why are you always going in and going after Democrats? Well, I have an interest in this. My community, I have an interest for my family, and there's a disproportionate amount of uh, attention and support that is given to the Democrat Party. And so I just want to be able to address this. And honestly, the real reason why I'm doing this is because I just want to debunk the false narratives that are out there. And that's the interesting thing about it, right? Because I correct false information, whether it's coming from Democrats or Republicans. But interestingly enough, like whenever I'm on these meta platforms like Facebook or Instagram, I get so much pushback whenever I critique Democrats. But then if I'm on X or TikTok, I get attacked by a lot of people who are on the right, a lot of people who are Republicans or MAGA. So I just wanted to like toss the partisanship aside, and I want to be able to address this logically and with a critical eye. Now, the narrative is that black people in America, your rights have been gutted, and it's now Jim Crow 2.0. You're hearing people like Chuck Schumer. You're hearing all of the political pundits, and everyone is using this sort of language. I've seen articles written by major news media platforms that have been saying that the Voting Rights Act was gutted. I'm hearing social activists, social justice activists saying the same thing, pundits, all of them parroting this same talking point with this, which is absolutely incontrovertibly false. And so to me, one, it's astounding. It's shocking to me, right? That we've gotten to a place in the media right now where people can just say whatever they want, make it up as they go along, and expect people to go along with it. And this is why I always put emphasis. I always place a lot of emphasis on the responsibility of the public to educate themselves and do research and ask questions. Because right now we're in an environment, a political environment, where real information is being hidden from us. So I'm going to get right into it on the VRA, on the Voting Rights Act. Now, what I will do, let me start with Rachel Maddow, because the level of manipulation and gaslighting was just astounding to me. But I'm gonna play it, and I'm gonna comment on it, and hopefully, some people learn from it, including some of these so-called activists out there who are intentionally gaslighting you. And I'm talking to you, Black people. So let's hear it. Let's hear it. Let's make sure that you guys can see it. I want to make sure you can see this. Why don't I see it? Oh, here it is. There we go. Maybe I'll put myself. All right, we'll just do it like this. All right, here we go. I'll play it loud enough so you guys can hear it.
But on the issue of race, on the treatment of African Americans specifically, even being terrible at what they're doing has still proven to be disastrous for our country. And it is, in part, the posturing and from the White House and the president. That is stuff that validates and excites the worst bigots in the country, and that is consequential. But it's more than that, too. We are now about 16 months into what has been from day one a concerted and intense targeting of Black Americans, specifically by this president and by this administration. On his first full day in office, he proclaims war on diversity efforts, not only in government, but in any institution in the country over which he can exert leverage, everything from schools and universities to law firms to private businesses of every stripe. He then immediately started firing some of the highest profile Black public officials in the whole U.S. government, seemingly regardless of any other thing about them. I mean, right away, we get the firing of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Charles C.Q. Brown. We get the firing of the Librarian of Congress, Carla Hayden. And then it's Gwynne Wilcox from the National Labor Relations Board. And then it's Robert Primus, the chair of the Surface Transportation Board. And then it's Alvin Brown from the NTSB. And then it's Peggy Carr, the head of the National Center for Education Statistics. And then it's Willie Phillips from FERC, from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. And then it's Lisa Cook from the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, and on and on and on.
So I just want you to see the tactic that they use. First, she basically told you that the Trump administration is going to war against Black people. Then they take all of these Black faces and she throws them all up on the screen in the context of firing them. And here's the interesting thing. Did you know that Black people are overrepresented in the federal government, in federal government jobs? And when it comes to government jobs, Black people are overrepresented per capita. And I've been warning Black people for the longest time about the scam of DEI, right? And how the Democrats have been so skillful at convincing Black people that the only way that they can get opportunity is if the Democrats gift wrap it for them and say, here, we're going to put you in all of these positions. Like when Joe Biden won the presidency, the first thing I said was, wow, you're going to see a whole lot of firsts. And it's the symbolism that is attached. But I've always seen it as a huge setup, because if you look at it legally, if you look at it from a critical lens, you would understand that DEI is first of all, it violates anti-discrimination laws. Period. It does. It simply does. And when you decide that you're going to force an outcome based on racial identity, it means that you are, by default, by extension, denying an opportunity to another racial group. Now, whether you agree with it morally or not, that's not the point. Legally, it is illegal to do such. And so when they set this equal outcome standard, which is equity, you are by default violating the Civil Rights Act. And so the reason why I'm pointing this out is because this has been the setup against Black people all along, because I knew that all of these Black people that Joe Biden was flooding into the federal government, all of these government contracts, all of these standards that they were creating, that was just like, here, take the money for all of these jobs and contracts, everything flowing to Black people. I knew it was temporary. It was obviously temporary. I mean, I don't know how no one could see that it was temporary. It had to be temporary, and it was going to be undone. It was going to be challenged, and it was going to be found to be unconstitutional. That is why DEI has always been done as a policy, but there's never been a law. It's never been legislated because it violates federal law. But Black people fell for it, and as predicted, when another administration comes in, they're going to undo it because you were set up, folks. So when they talk, let me not go too far. Let me not go too far ahead. Let me let Rachel Maddow continue.
When Trump and his top political donor, Elon Musk, then started just lopping off huge swaths of the federal government to disastrous practical effect, the largest and most egregious cuts targeted federal agencies that employed a disproportionate number of Black employees.
Well, there's a disproportionate number of Black employees in there from the get-go. So now when you target the agencies, by default, you're just going to be targeting Black people. And I want you guys to remember what I just said, because I'm going to address that later on. It's almost like Democrats are stacking the deck. They're flooding certain positions. They're flooding certain agencies and departments with Black people, many of them unnecessarily, many of those that are actually even futile, unnecessary agencies, positions, because we know they're going to end up disappearing. And then when someone comes in and they start to trim the fat, we know who's going to be on the chopping block. And instead of blaming the people who put you in that position deliberately, you're going to blame the person who comes in and cleans up the government, where you're standing right at the front of the line where the Democrats placed you. But let's go.
Reporter Erica Green wrote about this a few months ago for The Times, noting that nothing had moved backwards in the federal government for Black Americans this quickly or this far in over 100 years, since Woodrow Wilson came in 1912 and resegregated the federal workforce. Quote,
nothing set Black people backwards so fast. But isn't it interesting that the administration before that set them ahead so fast in employment? Just remember that.
Black employees were fired or...
And by the way, it's also notable that Joe Biden, under Joe Biden, you saw the biggest increase in federal jobs, federal expansion in modern history.
Demoted to lower level jobs, relegated to separate and inferior lunchrooms and other facilities, and accused of making white women feel unsafe. Those who remained were humiliated. A Black worker in the Postal Service was surrounded by screens so white workers would not have to look at him. Another employee had a cage built around him to separate him from his white counterparts. A clerk in the Treasury Secretary's office was assigned to rewrite all correspondence to address Black employees by their first names.
See the triggering?
The way Trump addressed the Librarian of Congress, Carla Hayden, by her first name when he crowed publicly about firing her for no reason.
Firing her for no reason.
In the year of our Lord.
Is that the woman who was like, they were like, is that the woman who they accused of mortgage fraud? I guess I'll have to look into that, because she just said for no reason, but I'm not sure if that's the same person.
Lord, 2025 and now 2026, this president and this administration is not just inheriting that history from the Wilson administration, it's furthering it in its own ways. Since 1965, there has been an executive order in effect. It was signed by Lyndon Johnson, 1965. Since 1965, all federal contractors have been banned by executive order from discriminating on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or national origin. Donald Trump.
Whoa, she slipped it in. She slipped it in. See, most of y'all didn't catch that, but I caught it. You saw how she slipped in gender and gender identity? LBJ did not write that. No, those terms were added to those by executive order after the 1964 Civil Rights Act and the Equal Employment Act. See, this is how they catch you. This is how they play you. You see, what she just tried to convince you of is that Donald Trump reinstituted segregation in government contracts, right? But what she didn't tell you, that the segregation she speaks of is keeping men out of women's bathrooms, which is why she threw in that language gender identity. You see, this is how propagandists work. Now, if you look at Section 202, because I've gone through this, if you look at the language, it explicitly states that there are protected areas, when like locker rooms, bathrooms, dressing rooms, and those are your private protected spaces for men and women. So you're not allowed to discriminate against them based on race, based on sex, based on religion. But then somewhere along the line, as the years went on, someone threw in, oh, you can't discriminate on the bathroom based on gender, you know, that fluid construct, gender identity. Oh, now a biological man, a 6'5", 300-pound man has the right to go into the bathroom with a woman now. So what they're calling segregation is keeping men out of women's bathrooms in government contracts. Did you all know that? Because what Rachel Maddow just said to you was Donald Trump brought back segregation in government contracts. No, Donald Trump protected women in women's spaces in government contracts. Now, that's not a partisan argument. That's a fact. Look it up. But let's continue.
Rescinded that 1965 rule on his first full day in office.
There you go.
Less than a month later, Trump announced another rule change. They rescinded Clause 52.222-21 of the Federal Acquisition Regulation, which doesn't sound like much, but I'll tell you what the title of that is. It's Prohibition of Segregated Facilities.
There we go.
That's what Trump rescinded less than 1 month into being back in the White House.
Oh, and that's the explicit part right there. That's explicitly what I was just describing to you. Let's hear her description.
That section reads, quote, the contractor agrees that it does not and will not maintain or provide for its employees any segregated facilities at any of its establishments, and that it does not and will not permit its employees to perform their services at any location under its control where segregated facilities are maintained.
Now, what she didn't mention is that the segregated facilities that she's talking about are bathrooms. That's simply it. What she didn't tell you is that those segregated facilities that she's speaking of are men and women's bathrooms. That's what she's comparing to Jim Crow, to tell black people, that Donald Trump is bringing back slavery. Like Joe Biden said to you, they're gonna have y'all back, they're gonna put y'all back in chains. Do you see the level of disrespect and condescension that they levy at you when they talk to you? They see black people as political infants. But let's hear what the brilliant Rachel Maddow, what else she has to say.
That anti-segregation clause has been in government contracts for decades. Donald Trump.
Look at the imagery, waiting room for colored only. You see how they're conflating colored only with trans? You see what they're doing? How many black people are being kept out of bathrooms because they're black? She's literally conflating biological men going into women's bathrooms with Jim Crow and colored only bathrooms. Do you see how they weaponize this against you black people?
Overtly reached out to rescind it, which means bluntly that the federal government no longer explicitly prohibits contractors from having segregated restaurants, waiting rooms, and drinking fountains.
That's such a lie. Okay, wait, I gotta stop. All right, hold on. Let me come back. All right, I just couldn't listen to any more of that bullshit anymore. So I wanted you all to see how they gaslight you, how they lie to you, they manipulate you, they try to emotionally trigger you. And if you're a person that doesn't actually look into the details, you'll see that if you don't look into the details, it's so easy for you to just kind of go along with the narrative. And then you start you're nervous. You feel, stressed out. You start to catastrophize. They use this language like constitutional crisis. Jim Crow, they love to evoke that sort of language to get that sort of a reaction from you. And this is what's going to lead into what I was going to talk to you guys about when it came to the recent Supreme Court decision on the gerrymandering in Louisiana. Because, and I specifically showed you that because I want you to understand the context under which Democrats speak to the black community. They don't speak to you based on economic policy. They don't talk to you pertaining to geopolitics because they don't think you're smart enough for that. They'll talk to you about voting rights because they need that from you. They'll talk to you about crime, bail reform, criminal justice reform, because they see you only as criminals. And they'll talk to you about something sexual, something that has to do with sexuality or degeneracy, sex work, protecting that for black people, or drug use. Yeah, that's another one. I think that pretty much sums up the politics that the Democrat Party engages with the left on. So when it comes to this issue of the Voting Rights Act, and honestly, this should have nothing to do with the Voting Rights Act. That Supreme Court decision was about racialized redistricting. Now, it's an inconvenient truth that gerrymandering is legal. I don't like gerrymandering, but gerrymandering is something that Democrats and Republicans engage in, and it is for the explicit purpose of political gain, political advantage. Like the Democrats, they draw out these district maps and they relegate Republicans into a little corner. Quite often you'll see like they'll have a certain amount of Republicans in their state, but zero Republican representation. You have Republicans who will gerrymander and they'll draw out lines that relegate the Democrats to their side for their political advantage in order for them to get their electoral map drawn out and get their electoral votes. This has gone on forever. This is what, New England, I think all of New England. Yeah, New England is 45% Republican and they have zero Republican representation in Congress. Now, I would say that's a problem from a political perspective, from a representative perspective. So, where do we go from here? So, we know that each party has the right to, let's use the word segregate, segregate the other party for political gain. They get to relegate their parties into a little corner over there. They get to relegate that party into that corner over there for their political purposes. Now, the crux of this argument here, the crux of the issue with Louisiana was that you had civil rights groups that were arguing that because Louisiana is 30% black, they only had one black district. And so what the Democrat Party did was they wanted to redraw a line. First of all, the Republicans had redistricted. And of course, as usual, the Democrats are like, no, it's disenfranchising black people. And so they sued and they won in a lower court where they were allowed to redraw the lines, right? Now follow me. So they redrew their district lines in the most unnatural, ridiculous looking way. It was crazy. The one up there and over there, it looked bananas. Why? Because they were strategically carving out all of the areas for the black people to segregate them, to relegate them to one big apportionment for the advantage of the Democrat Party to create a second district. Now, what is that doing? That is racialized gerrymandering explicitly. And so a group of people came out and they sued and said, no, that's in violation of the Voting Rights Act because you cannot gerrymander, you cannot redistrict for the primary purpose of race. Now, the justification that the Democrats were using was that, well, the Republicans, they were gerrymandering based on race. Why? How? What's your justification? Well, look at the outcome. The black people only have this representation. And this is where they get you, black people. Pay attention. You see, that Supreme Court decision did not in any way gut or alter the civil rights, the Voting Rights Act. What it did was it tightened it in order to be able to better identify when there is racial discrimination or any sort of infringement upon voting rights or practices by a specific protected group, a racial group. This is what the decision said. It said you are not allowed, in accordance with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, I'm going to pull it up. It said you are not allowed to draw these district lines based on race, unless in like some unique situation where it calls for white, maybe the other side did it, but you're not allowed to do that. But the justification that the Democrats used to say that Republicans were racist in their redistricting is because, oh, well, there's only one black district. So whenever the Republicans redistrict for their political purpose, remember, Republicans and Democrats are allowed to redistrict for political gain. That's voting, right? Voting patterns. So if you now black people, listen, please listen. If the Republicans are redistricting Democrats over into a corner, and you as black people are going to go flooding into the room following behind Democrats, 90% of you, 90% of the time, you're running along and following unconditionally behind Democrats. When they redistrict Democrats, who's also going to be there? You. And so the Democrats have been using you as their political football as justification for racial gerrymandering based on outcome. They're saying, well, look, all the black people are over here with us. So they're basically gerrymandering because of the black people, not because they're Democrats. There's no way of proving that they're doing this based on race. Like, what are the voting pattern differences? Like, how do we establish this to show that instead of gerrymandering based on the standard, which is political gain, why are you saying that they're doing it because they're black? Oh, because you have the convenience that all black people go with you anyway. Do you all understand what I'm explaining to you here? I need you to understand how this serves as a disadvantage to Black people as it pertains to political leverage and relevance. Your vote is so guaranteed. You are such an easy lay that the Democrats, they don't have to take you seriously. They do not take you seriously, as evidenced by the garbage that Rachel Maddow was just spewing, and the fact that they use you as political pawns and weapons against Republicans while actively ignoring you and treating you like property. How can you argue otherwise? Because the argument that, hey, they're disenfranchising Black people by redistricting Democrats. So that means that if you're Black, you better be a Democrat. That means that you're not Black anymore. You're a Democrat. If you're a Democrat, if you're Black, you better be a Democrat, because as Joe Biden said, if you don't vote Democrat, you ain't Black, essentially. So for all of the Black folks out there saying that we're not a monolith, we're not a monolithic group, why is it that the Democrat Party knows that you're such a sure thing that they can just replace Black with Democrat? Because that's literally what's happening. And so what the Supreme Court did was they decided that, well, look, you cannot just simply use outcome as the determinant factor for the justification or the accusation that they're being racist, because all you Black people, you run with Democrats anyway. How, oh my God, how embarrassing is that anyway, bro? Like, really, how embarrassing is that? That we following behind them like puppies and shit. But at the same time, arguing we're not a monolith. So here's the question that I need Black folks to answer. And I would love for the people like Rachel Maddow, Joy-Ann Reid, all of these talking heads, the Black gatekeeper class, the bourgeoisie, the intelligentsia. This is the question that I would love for them to answer. If Black people voted 80 to 90% for Republicans, do you think the Democrat Party would be filing any lawsuits to protect the Black vote? Do you think Democrats would be out there talking about, oh my God, this is voter suppression of Black people? You think they'd be concerned about your vote if you were voting, even if you were voting split down the middle? Do you think that they would be fighting so hard to keep you all grouped up together for electoral advantage? No. So while the Democrat Party is using you for their political gain, while weaponizing race against their political opponents, while simultaneously disrespecting and demeaning you, the Republicans, who are actually doing it, let's keep it a buck, in most cases they're just doing it based on, at least from what we can prove, they're doing it based on political advantage, but it's always by default weaponized to accuse them of race. And I'm going to give you another little stat. Due to this Supreme Court ruling, we have already seen that there are at least 125 seats, something like 3/4 of the, there's at least 125 seats that are provably done for the explicit purpose that were districts. I'm sorry. There were 125 seats that were gained through racial gerrymandering. Oh, so it looks like my Twitter stream, something happened with my Twitter. Okay, I guess I'll remove it. Nah, I guess I'll remove it. So, yeah. All right, save changes. Hold on, give me 1 second. Okay. Oh shit. Something just happened. All right. So yeah. So I want you guys to really think about this and understand that. Oh, you know what? That's what I wanted to do. I want to give, let me give you the text. I think it's important. Let me give you the text of, yes, I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you the text from Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. Let's read it together. Share screen. Oops. Hold on. Okay, I'm not sure if you guys can see that, so I'll read it. No voting qualification or prerequisite to voting or standard practice or procedure shall be imposed or applied by any state or political subdivision, we're talking about redistricting, in a manner which results in a denial or abridgment of the right of any citizen of the United States to vote on account of race or color or in the contravention of the guarantees set forth in Section 103 subsection F of this title as provided in subsection B. So it's saying that redistricting, and I'm going to put it in plain English, redistricting is not allowed if it is going to deny the right to vote of anyone based on race or color or in contravention or in denial of any of the other standards that are set forth. And Section B says a violation of subsection A, which is above, is established if based on the totality of the circumstances, it is shown or proven that the political processes that led to that nomination or the election in the state or political subdivision, so that the gerrymandering, are not equally open to participation by members of a class of citizens protected by subsection race, gender, and all that stuff. So, are Black people being denied the right to vote? That's one question. Are they being denied the right to participate equally in elections? So I'm going to need y'all to stop spewing this dumbass rhetoric saying that Black people's voting rights are under attack, unless you believe that Black people's voting rights mean Democrat voting rights. Unless you replace the word Black people with Democrat people. Because that's basically what you're arguing, is that the Democrat Party owns Black people and their votes. And I find that demeaning. I find that humiliating. And I find it incredibly arrogant that these people continue to broker in politics that express ownership over us. And the only thing they have to do is just throw out the word racism here and there and Jim Crow, and they got us just like that. So I'm going to continue to do these where I debunk these liars, because I'm going to have to keep fact checking these people, because unfortunately, far too many people in the public, far too many of us today are political children. So don't complain that they are treating you like political children when you're acting like political children. Calling people who dare to venture outside of the of the Democrat Party coons, traitors, Sambos, bootlickers, sellouts. How can anyone take you seriously? I think we've reached a point now in history where there is so much information available that no one has an excuse anymore. You guys have no more excuses. Ask questions, look into the information, do some deep diving, Don't just accept narratives that are fed to you by people who you deem as authorities on issues. Because if you do just a little bit more questioning, you're going to realize that most of these people out here who are opining on these issues, they have not the slightest grasp of anything that they are talking about. And those of us who are actually viewing things with a critical eye, utilizing critical analysis and trying to understand things from a policy perspective, we're the ones that are vilified. We're the ones who should actually be leading these conversations. The Black community doesn't need any more leaders, y'all. You know what we need? We need more thinkers. We need more independent thinkers, people who will challenge the status quo. And lastly, it is time that we abolish the black gatekeeper class. We must abolish the black bourgeoisie, the boule. They serve no purpose other than to keep us managed and under the thumb and control of white liberals. And with that, I'm going to get out of here. I appreciate you guys tapping in. Love y'all. Talk to y'all soon. Peace.
You